Humanity has predicted the end of the world so many times, you'd think the apocalypse runs on a subscription service. Every few years, someone confidently announces that this is it. The sky is falling, civilization is doomed, and you'd better panic immediately. And the reasons? Oh, they're spectacular. At various points, people have been absolutely certain that comets, computers, radio waves, barcodes, and even a children's toy were about to wipe humanity off the map. Not maybe, not possibly. No. Total extinction. Pack it up. Game over. And the most incredible part, millions of people believed it with the same confidence normally reserved for gravity. But if you think that's the peak of human panic, trust me, we haven't even reached the truly ridiculous predictions yet. 1. Halley's Comet, 1910. Let's begin with one of my favorites. The time humanity looked up at a glowing space rock and collectively decided it was about to murder everyone. In 1910, Halley's Comet swung by Earth, which normally would be a cool astronomy moment. But instead, newspapers noticed that the comet's tail contained a trace gas called cyanogen, and suddenly the entire planet lost its mind. People were convinced the Earth would pass through the comet's poisonous tail, and the atmosphere would instantly turn into a cosmic gas chamber. Entrepreneurs started selling anti-comet pills, gas masks, and even bottled pure air. Imagine panic buying oxygen because a glowing snowball is passing by at millions of miles away. It's like seeing a plane fly overhead and immediately buying scuba gear in case the sky floods. The comet passed, nobody died, and humanity learned absolutely nothing. We simply moved on, patiently waiting for the next opportunity to panic about the sky. 2. The Large Hadron Collider, 2008. Next up is the moment humanity looked at a giant underground science machine and collectively decided it was basically a destroy the planet button. In 2008, scientists at CERN switched on the Large Hadron Collider, a 27-kilometer tunnel designed to smash tiny particles together so physicists could understand how the universe works. A completely reasonable scientific project. Unfortunately, the internet heard particle collider and translated it as black hole generator. Suddenly, thousands of people believed the experiment would create a microscopic black hole that would swallow Earth like a cosmic vacuum cleaner. Lawsuits were filed to stop the machine. Petitions circulated. People were genuinely convinced a group of physicists in Switzerland were about to accidentally erase reality like someone hitting delete on the universe. The collider turned on, and absolutely nothing exploded. Instead, scientists discovered the Higgs boson. So the only thing that collapsed that day was the credibility of people who learned physics from conspiracy forums. 3. Y2K, the Millennium Computer. Apocalypse. As the year 2000 approached, humanity became convinced civilization would collapse because computers might get confused by the number 2000. The problem was simple. Many old computer systems stored years using only 2 digits. So when 1999 rolled into 2000, machines might think it was 1900. And somehow, that tiny glitch turned into predictions that airplanes would fall out of the sky, banks would erase everyone's money, power grids would collapse, and nuclear missiles might launch themselves out of sheer confusion. Governments spent billions preparing. Survivalists stocked bunkers full of canned beans. Entire TV specials predicted the digital apocalypse. People literally sat at home on New Year's Eve waiting for the world to shut down, like a Windows computer crashing. Midnight arrived, the lights stayed on, planes stayed in the air, and the only real disaster was realizing humanity had spent a decade panicking about a calendar bug. 4. The War of the Worlds. Panic, 1938. In 1938, a radio drama accidentally proved that if you say something in a serious enough voice, people will believe almost anything. Orson Welles broadcast a fictional adaptation of War of the Worlds, presented as a series of breaking news reports about Martians invading Earth. The show clearly stated it was fiction at the beginning, but many listeners tuned in late, so suddenly thousands of Americans believed aliens had landed in New Jersey and were vaporizing cities with heat rays. Phone lines jammed, some people fled their homes, others reportedly grabbed weapons to fight extraterrestrials. Imagine preparing to defend Earth because a radio announcer said Martians were walking around New Jersey. The invasion, of course, did not exist, But the panic revealed something fascinating about humanity. If the apocalypse is announced with enough confidence, people won't question it. They'll just assume the aliens chose New Jersey as their first stop. 5. The 2012 Mayan calendar apocalypse. In 2012, the internet discovered that the ancient Mayan calendar ended on December 21st, and immediately concluded this meant the world was scheduled to end that day too. The logic here is incredible. When your wall calendar runs out in December, you don't assume the universe stops existing on January 1st. You buy another calendar. But millions of people were convinced the Maya had secretly predicted the apocalypse thousands of years ago. Documentaries, survival guides, and Hollywood movies appeared overnight. People built bunkers and stocked supplies. Then December 21st arrived, and absolutely nothing happened. December 22nd showed up like an awkward punchline. The Mayan calendar didn't predict the end of the world. It simply completed a cycle, which means the only thing that actually ended that day was humanity's ability to learn basic calendar logic. 6. Killer bees. Panic. 1970s. In the 1970s, America became convinced that a swarm of tiny flying insects was about to conquer the continent like a miniature air force. Africanized honeybees, nicknamed killer bees, were spreading north from South America, and the media immediately upgraded them from slightly aggressive insects to the airborne apocalypse. News reports made it sound like they were marching toward the United States with a tiny buzzing battle plan. Movies portrayed them as unstoppable clouds of death that could wipe out entire cities. People imagined swarms chasing cars down highways like something out of a disaster movie. In reality, they were still bees. Slightly more defensive bees, yes, but still insects whose biggest life achievement is making honey. Decades later, the bees did spread across parts of the Americas, and humanity responded by continuing to mow lawns, go to work, and occasionally get stung like we always have. Turns out civilization is surprisingly resilient against insects the size of paper clips. 7. The satanic barcode panic. 1980s. When barcodes started appearing on grocery products in the late 20th century, some people looked at those innocent little lines and immediately concluded they were part of a satanic conspiracy. According to the theory, the barcode secretly contained the number 666, the mark of the beast from the Book of Revelation. The logic was breathtaking. A few slightly longer lines inside the barcode looked vaguely like the number 6. Therefore, the supermarket had become a gateway to the apocalypse. Entire sermons were preached about the dangers of scanning groceries. Some believers refused to buy products with barcodes at all, which must have made grocery shopping extremely complicated. Imagine standing in the cereal aisle squinting at a box of cornflakes like a medieval monk studying forbidden scripture. Meanwhile, the rest of humanity was just trying to buy milk and leave. In the end, the barcode did not summon the Antichrist. It just made checkout lines slightly faster. 8. The TV will destroy humanity. Panic, 1950s. When television became popular in the 1950s, a surprising number of experts were convinced it would destroy civilization. Critics warned that people would become hypnotized by the glowing screen and lose the ability to think, read, or interact with each other. Families would apparently sit silently in front of televisions until society collapsed into a fog of laziness and stupidity. Sound familiar? Every generation seems to think the newest technology will melt everyone's brain. At the time, television was treated like some kind of mind control device that would erase culture itself. Newspapers warned about intellectual decline, moral decay, and the end of meaningful conversation. Fast forward a few decades, and television did not destroy humanity. It mostly gave us sitcoms, cooking shows, and several thousand hours of people arguing on reality TV. So, yes, it changed culture, but civilization somehow survived the terrifying threat of the living room screen. 9. The nuclear power will ignite the atmosphere. Fear, 1940s. When nuclear weapons were first being tested during the Manhattan Project, some scientists briefly worried about a truly dramatic possibility. What if the explosion accidentally ignited Earth's atmosphere? Imagine that for a moment. Humanity invents a new bomb and accidentally turns the entire sky into one giant fireball. A few researchers ran calculations to make sure that the chain reaction wouldn't spread through nitrogen in the air. Thankfully, the math said it wouldn't happen. But the fact that humanity briefly paused and asked, "Hey, are we about to set the planet on fire?" is both reassuring and mildly terrifying. It's like lighting a match in your kitchen and suddenly wondering if the entire house might explode. The tests went ahead, the atmosphere remained unburned, and the world continued spinning. But for a short moment, humanity looked at the sky and wondered if we had just invented the ultimate self-destruct button. 10. The Great Smog Panic, 1952. In 1952, London was covered by a thick smog caused by coal smoke, fog, and industrial pollution. It became so dense that visibility dropped to a few meters, and the city looked like the set of a very depressing horror movie. People genuinely feared the toxic cloud might suffocate the entire population. Public transportation stopped, hospitals filled with patients struggling to breathe, and rumors spread that the city might never recover. Now, unlike many items on this list, the smog was actually dangerous. It caused thousands of deaths, but some people believed the fog itself would literally wipe London off the map forever. Instead, it triggered environmental reforms and new clean air laws. In other words, humanity looked at a choking cloud of pollution and finally decided maybe turning the entire sky into a chimney wasn't the best long-term strategy. 11. The Telephone Will Ruin Society. Fear, late 1800s. When the telephone was first introduced in the late 19th century, critics warned it would completely destroy human interaction. The argument was that people would stop visiting each other in person because they could talk through wires instead. Imagine the horror, conversations happening remotely. Some experts believed social skills would vanish, families would become distant, and society would collapse into isolation. It's amazing how familiar this argument sounds today when people complain about smartphones. At the time, though, the idea of talking through a machine felt unnatural and vaguely suspicious. Newspapers ran serious debates about whether the telephone was morally dangerous. Instead of destroying society, the telephone mostly allowed people to call relatives, complain to customer service, and accidentally dial wrong numbers for the next 100 years. Civilization survived the terrifying concept of talking through a wire. 12. The Electricity is Dangerous Sorcery. Panic, 1800s. When electricity first started appearing in cities during the 19th century, many people treated it like dark magic. Imagine walking into a room and seeing light appear instantly without candles or fire. To people who had lived their entire lives by lantern light, this felt suspiciously supernatural. Some critics warned that electrical currents were unnatural forces that could harm the human body or disrupt nature itself. Others worried the new power lines would poison the air or cause mysterious illnesses. It's easy to laugh now, but imagine being told invisible energy was suddenly flowing through wires across your city. It sounds like something from a wizard's workshop. Eventually, electricity proved extremely useful for things like lighting homes, powering machines, and charging the devices people now use to argue online about conspiracies. 13. The Y2K plane crash, fear, 1999. One of the most specific Y2K fears involved airplanes. As the year 2000 approached, people were convinced computers inside aircraft would suddenly malfunction when the date changed. The theory was that navigation systems would reset, autopilot would fail, and planes would fall out of the sky like confused metal birds. News segments featured dramatic simulations of aircraft spiraling toward the ground at midnight. Some travelers actually canceled flights around New Year's Eve because they believed the sky might suddenly become a graveyard of falling airplanes. Midnight arrived, and the planes kept flying normally. Pilots continued doing their jobs, computers handled the date change, and the only crash that occurred was the collapse of an entire genre of doomsday predictions. 14. The particle accelerators will rip open reality. Fear. Long before the Large Hadron Collider, particle accelerators already had a reputation for sounding vaguely like science fiction weapons. The idea of smashing particles at near-light speed made some people worry scientists might accidentally tear open reality itself. After all, if you collide things hard enough, who knows what might happen? Maybe a portal opens, Maybe a new universe appears. Maybe physics simply gives up and the planet disappears. The truth is far less dramatic. Particle accelerators have been operating for decades and mostly produce new data, new discoveries, and the occasional headline that sounds confusing to everyone, except physicists. The universe, unfortunately for apocalypse enthusiasts, has proven remarkably stable even when humans build giant machines designed to smash atoms together. 15. The Millennium Planetary Alignment. Panic. 2000. Around the year 2000, another apocalyptic theory appeared. The planets were supposedly going to align in a way that would trigger earthquakes, tidal waves, or even flip Earth's magnetic field. The idea sounded impressive because planetary alignments feel cosmic and mysterious. In reality, the gravitational pull from those planets was tiny compared to, say, the moon sitting quietly above us every night. But the alignment still inspired books, documentaries, and dramatic warnings about global catastrophe. When the alignment finally happened, absolutely nothing unusual occurred. Earth kept spinning, oceans stayed in their place, and the planets continue doing what they've done for billions of years, orbiting the sun while humanity occasionally panics about it. 16. In 1954, a Seattle housewife looked out her window, saw a bright streak in the sky, and became absolutely convinced the world was ending because of mysterious cosmic debris. Newspapers picked up the story, and suddenly people started reporting strange metal fragments falling from space. Naturally, the immediate assumption was not, maybe something fell off a plane. No, clearly Earth was being bombarded by alien weapons or the early stages of planetary destruction. For a brief moment, people imagined the sky itself had decided to start throwing rocks at humanity, like an annoyed landlord evicting noisy tenants. Investigations eventually revealed the debris was almost certainly leftover metal slag falling from a nearby aircraft. So the cosmic apocalypse turned out to be the aerospace version of someone dropping junk out of a moving truck. Humanity stared at the sky expecting doom, and instead discovered gravity doing its usual boring job. 17. In the early 20th century, there was a genuinely popular belief that radio waves might slowly poison humanity. Yes, the same invisible signals that allow you to hear music or news broadcasts were treated like some kind of creeping atmospheric toxin. Critics warned that constant exposure to radio transmissions could disrupt the human brain, damage nerves, or subtly warp people's thoughts. Imagine hearing a jazz broadcast and worrying your neurons might dissolve like sugar in tea. The fear came from a simple misunderstanding. Invisible energy traveling through the air sounded suspiciously like something dangerous. To people unfamiliar with electromagnetic waves, radio towers looked like giant metal devices quietly flooding the sky with mysterious forces. Of course, radio didn't destroy civilization. It mostly gave humanity weather reports, baseball games, and decades of people yelling into microphones about politics. 18. In 1910, another wonderful theory popped up, claiming that Earth's orbit might someday drift just slightly closer to the sun and instantly cook the entire planet like a cosmic oven. This idea was repeated in newspapers as if gravity itself occasionally forgot how to do its job. The theory imagined Earth wandering toward the sun, the way a distracted shopper drifts toward the snack aisle. Scientists tried explaining orbital mechanics, but panic has never been particularly interested in mathematics. For a while, people seriously entertained the idea that our planet might slowly spiral inward and turn the oceans into steam. In reality, planetary orbits are extremely stable over enormous timescales. The Earth is not a shopping cart with a broken wheel drifting toward the nearest heat source. But the theory remained popular because the sun is big, hot, and suspiciously present every day. 19. In the 1800s, some doctors warned that trains traveling at high speeds might literally suffocate passengers. The argument was that the human body was never meant to move faster than about 30 miles per hour. Anything faster could allegedly cause breathing problems, madness, or even death. When early locomotives began approaching speeds of 40 or 50 miles per hour, critics predicted passengers' lungs might simply stop working. Imagine sitting in a train carriage calmly reading a newspaper, while outside someone insists you should be dead because your body exceeded its recommended speed limit. The human body, however, stubbornly refused to implode. people continued riding trains without spontaneously losing oxygen. It turns out lungs do not contain built-in speed sensors that shut down at 30 miles per hour. 20. In the early days of electricity, another prediction circulated, claiming that electric lighting might permanently damage eyesight and slowly blind entire cities. The reasoning was that artificial light was unnatural, and therefore the human eye might not handle it properly. Gas lamps and candles were apparently fine, but the moment light came from a glowing filament inside a glass bulb, civilization was doomed to stumble around blind. Newspapers warned about electric glare destroying vision. Parents worried their children might grow up staring at bulbs like moths. Of course, electric light ended up being one of the most useful inventions in human history. Instead of blinding society, it mostly allowed people to read at night, work indoors, and eventually invent the glowing screens where modern conspiracy theories now live. 21. In 1912, a widely discussed theory claimed that Earth might pass through a region of space filled with deadly ether clouds. These hypothetical clouds were believed to carry mysterious cosmic radiation, capable of poisoning the atmosphere. The concept came from early misunderstandings about how space worked. Scientists once believed space contained an invisible substance called ether that carried light waves. If Earth drifted through a dense patch of this ether, some writers speculated, the entire biosphere might collapse. Imagine humanity nervously drifting through the galaxy, like a car driving through a suspicious fog bank. Eventually, scientists realized ether doesn't exist the way they imagined. Space is mostly empty, which is both comforting and slightly disappointing for people hoping for dramatic cosmic fog. 22. In the late 19th century, bicycles were briefly blamed for threatening human evolution. Some doctors warned that riding bicycles could permanently distort the human face. The condition even had a name: bicycle face. According to the theory, the intense concentration required for cycling would twist facial muscles into a permanent expression of exhaustion and anxiety. Riders were supposedly doomed to develop bulging eyes, clenched jaws, and general facial misery. This was presented as a serious medical concern, not a punchline. The bicycle, an invention consisting mostly of two wheels and optimism, was apparently capable of reshaping human anatomy. Needless to say, millions of people rode bicycles, and their faces remained stubbornly normal. 23. In 1910, yet another comet panic erupted when astronomers announced Earth would pass through the tail of Halley's comet. Some people believed the tail might contain mysterious cosmic electricity capable of disrupting Earth's magnetic field. This was described with the same calm tone usually reserved for discussing weather forecasts. Imagine casually hearing that a giant celestial broom might sweep across the planet and scramble compasses worldwide. The truth is, comet tails are incredibly thin, thinner than the best vacuum humans can create. Passing through one is like walking through a single grain of perfume mist. Earth moved through the comet tail exactly as predicted, and absolutely nothing unusual happened, aside from thousands of people realizing they had bought gas masks for a problem located millions of kilometers away. 24. When telegraph wires spread across continents in the 19th century, some critics warned that the constant electrical pulses might disturb Earth's natural magnetic balance. The idea was that thousands of miles of metal wire buzzing with signals could somehow upset the planet's internal magnetism like a giant cosmic tuning fork. If that happened, people feared compasses might stop working, navigation would collapse, and ships would wander the oceans like confused ducks. The theory assumed Earth's magnetic field was delicate enough to be disrupted by humans tapping messages across wires. In reality, the planet's magnetic field is generated deep inside the molten core and could not care less about your telegram about missing luggage. 25. In the early 20th century, several writers predicted that humanity might accidentally use up all the oxygen in Earth's atmosphere. The logic was that industrial activity, fires, and breathing itself might gradually consume the planet's oxygen supply. If enough factories burned fuel, the theory went, humanity could suffocate the entire biosphere. This prediction ignored the small detail that plants constantly produce oxygen through photosynthesis. The planet isn't a sealed room slowly running out of air. It's an enormous chemical system with forests, oceans, algae, and countless organisms recycling gases every second. But for a while, the idea of Earth running out of oxygen sounded just dramatic enough to keep people worried. 26. In 1919, some commentators worried that airplanes might disturb the upper atmosphere so much that weather systems would collapse. Early aviation looked wild, fragile machines buzzing across the sky like mechanical dragonflies. Critics imagined thousands of aircraft slicing through clouds and somehow unraveling the delicate machinery of the atmosphere. Storm patterns might change, winds might become chaotic, and Earth's climate could spiral out of control because humans decided to fly around a bit. It turns out the atmosphere is slightly more durable than that. Even modern aviation barely nudges global weather patterns compared to the natural forces already moving air around the planet. 27. In the 1960s, there was a brief panic that communication satellites might accidentally collide in orbit and create a chain reaction that would rain debris onto Earth. The idea sounded dramatic enough for science fiction. One satellite hits another, creating fragments that hit more satellites, until orbit becomes a cosmic demolition derby. The sky would supposedly fill with falling metal, and humanity would be bombarded by its own technology. While orbital debris is a real concern today, the early panic imagined satellites crashing constantly like bumper cars in space. In reality, satellites move in carefully controlled orbits, and collisions are extremely rare. 28. In 1973, some environmental commentators predicted the world's oil supply would run out so quickly that modern civilization might collapse within decades. Now, energy shortages are serious topics, but the more extreme predictions imagine cities grinding to a halt almost overnight. Planes would stop flying, factories would shut down, and society would slide back to horse-drawn transport within a generation. Humanity has certainly faced energy challenges, but the dramatic instant collapse scenario underestimated something important. Humans are remarkably good at inventing alternatives when resources become expensive. Civilization did not return to horses. 29. In the early nuclear age, some writers predicted nuclear testing might permanently tear holes in Earth's ozone layer. The theory suggested that repeated atomic explosions could shred the protective atmospheric layer, shielding us from ultraviolet radiation. Without it, sunlight might become dangerously intense, and the surface of the planet could become hostile to life. The ozone layer does respond to certain chemicals, but nuclear tests were not the planet-wide ozone shredders people feared. Ironically, the real ozone threat later turned out to be much more mundane: chemicals used in refrigerators and spray cans. 30. In the 1980s, several conspiracy theories insisted that microwave ovens might eventually fill homes with dangerous radiation, capable of mutating human cells. The idea was that invisible waves bouncing around inside the kitchen appliance could somehow leak out and quietly rearrange DNA, like tiny invisible gremlins. People imagined their leftovers heating, while their genetic code melted like cheese on a pizza. Microwave ovens, however, use non-ionizing radiation that simply agitates water molecules to produce heat. The only thing truly endangered by a microwave is the leftover spaghetti you forgot inside it. 31. In the late 20th century, a popular rumor claimed that humanity might accidentally trigger a catastrophic chain reaction in Earth's core through large explosions or drilling projects. The idea sounded like something from a disaster movie. Drill too deep, shake the planet too hard, and suddenly the core destabilizes like a cracked engine. Earth would erupt from the inside, and civilization would vanish in a geological tantrum. The problem with this theory is scale. The energy inside Earth's core is unimaginably larger than anything humans can produce. Even the most powerful explosions are tiny compared to the forces already churning inside the planet. In other words, humanity is impressive, but we are nowhere near capable of accidentally kicking the Earth hard enough to break it. And there you have it. Centuries of humanity staring at the sky, a machine, a calendar, or a kitchen appliance, and confidently declaring, well, this is definitely how the world ends. Somehow, the planet survived every single prediction, which is honestly disappointing for all the doomsday prophets who were so sure they had the script right. Now, I'm curious, which one was the absolute dumbest? Drop your vote in the comments or tell me the craziest apocalypse prediction I missed, because trust me, the rabbit hole of human panic goes much deeper. And if you enjoy watching civilization repeatedly embarrass itself, hit like, subscribe, and stick around. We're clearly not done yet.